some common ethical dilemmas that sex therapists encounter?
Gosh, there are so many. And this is gonna say there's just so many. I was trying to think of like how to narrow down like the common ones. I think the common ones are the ones around people coming in and not understanding what sex therapy is.
Ah, yes.
I've had older populations come in and think that like I'm gonna introduce them to someone.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm going, "Hmm, no, that's not my job title." But it's not out of, shame or anything. It's
Yeah.
out of we don't talk about it. So therefore, no one knows what questions they need to ask before they come in.
Yeah, exactly. And I know from working in this industry that a lot of people think that sex therapy is like sex surrogacy, where like you're going to go into the office and have sex with the therapist or do sexual things with the therapist. And while that does exist in sex surrogacy, that
Mhm.
is something that people do. That is not what sex therapy is. Sex therapy
Yeah.
is talk therapy. And so
Yep.
I could see where people have a lot of misconceptions about that.
Granted, we've got so many great skills and a plethora of ideas and concepts and things to share with the client so that they can take that home and they can utilize that any way that they want to, as far as like with their partners, or with themselves or all those. We talk about all that stuff. We get into all of it, but it's not acted out in any way in sex therapy. And I think that that's one of the ethical ones that's a little bit the most uncomfortable, especially at first,
Mhm.
to really navigate. And so I try to get therapists to talk about that one the most at the beginning.
What are some unique or uncommon situations that can arise for sex therapists?
One of the things that does happen also is that it's hard to explain to communities that are in the, like, say, polyamorous communities.
Uh-huh.
They have such an open concept, and I happen to be certified in consensual non-monogamy. And so one of the things is that so and so tells so and so, but then it's the ethical dilemma is that sometimes you don't know whenever you have like a partner of a partner of a polycule.
Yeah.
And then you end up in this conversation and you're like, okay, and then that ethical dilemma is where where am I supposed to go with this? If it's not a part of, then how do I handle it? So that's one that comes up that's really awkward because you don't know until you usually already been working with the person for a while. And so
Yeah.
that's a more unique one. If they come in and I know that they're a part of the polycule, then I know what questions to ask and kind
Yeah.
of what parameters to set. Um, but if I don't, that's whenever I kind of go, oh, wait, and we kind of stumble in to figuring out the ethics of that.
I know one of the teasers we've been giving like on social media is like your client says they're attracted to you. And so things like that. Does that happen often with sex therapists?
It does. There is this relationship that builds, and you talk about very intimate concepts.
Yeah.
And so it is easy to have that transference.
So one more question for you, Melinda. Is there any other like ethical situations you can think of that might come up as a sex therapist?
One of the other ones that I thought of was if people are a part of multiple communities. And so what that means is that we're all human as therapists and we all want to follow ethics. And so one of the ethical dilemmas is how do you be a therapist and be in your room? And then also, if you are a part of the kink community or are a part of consensual non-monogamy, and you end up in some circles that are a little bit smaller than
Mhm.
others. And so how to handle those ethical dilemmas and also have a life.
And that's a really good one, especially if you live in a small community. If you live in a small town and the next nearest city is like several hours away, you're more
Mhm.
likely to end up in these situations because there's less options for kink clubs or play parties or things like that.
Yes, 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 yes. And back in my day, it was about being gay. And so as a gay therapist, it was like, oh, wait, how do I date?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like, wait a minute, how does that work? And so it was the same thing. So I went through it personally in figuring out my journey.
And I know people hear ethics and they're like, snore fest. Like, this is going to be so boring. It's ethics. But when you're talking about ethics and sex therapy or sexuality professions, it gets really interesting. It's not your grandma's ethics, okay?